Hey guys, this week we have a pretty difficult topic that we're going to be going through. Figured it'd be easier to create a short couple-minute video that you can watch rather than me typing a bunch of stuff out in an email. And so while this is a tough topic, it is one that is super prevalent right now amongst our teenagers. We're going to be talking about sex, gender, and sexuality. And while in an hour discussion, we don't have all the time in the world to unpack everything, but my hope is that we can start to understand a little bit about what these things are and how God intended them to be. And so the discussion guide is broken up into three parts. The first part is trying to personalize it for the students and helping them to identify what they've heard or they know about the topics already. So the first question is really just trying to get at what have you heard about this topic? What have you been in conversation with? Do you know what some of these things are? And if so, what context have they been in? And that's really, like I said, just kind of introducing the topic. Second portion is going to be on defining terms. While this might seem tedious, this part is absolutely crucial because there are terms that are thrown around and we might have assumptions, our students might have assumptions, and they might actually be incorrect. So then when we look at a biblical idea of it, we're actually looking at it through a lens of an incorrect term. And so the three big words that we're going to be using are sex, gender, and sexuality. And so on the second page of your discussion guide, I provide some information for you on what those words are. And in that time of asking them what they think the words are, it is important that you proclaim truth on what those terms actually are. So please look at that second page of the discussion guide. If the students don't give you these responses, please speak them in that time. You don't have to read word for word. You can if you want, but the purpose is we need to make sure we're right in these terms moving forward before we start having discussions on what they are biblically. And so the first three terms are that: sex or sexual orientation, gender, and sexuality. The fourth term I have on here is intersex. This is a particular situation that is an abnormality. It's not a normal situation, but it is a reality. And so I have it on here just in case it gets brought up. For some groups it might get brought up, for some groups it might not. The reason I put this on here is not that you need to interject it into the conversation, but you have information on it just in case it does. Okay, so that's the second portion. The last portion of the discussion guide is what does Scripture have to say? Primarily getting at this idea that God has created our sex intentionally. He has created our sexuality intentionally, all for the purpose of male and female both together complete the image of God. In Genesis, we see that them together, not individually apart from each other. Yes, they are made in God's image, but they together complete the image. So that influences how we look at sexuality, and the fact that our Creator, God, created it to be as such is important for the way that we live our lives and the way that we engage topics like this. So that's kind of the flow of the discussion guide. Again, you know your groups, so as you guys have personal discussions, as thoughts get brought up, navigate them well. It can be really easy to spend your whole time on the first question: what have you heard? I would encourage you not to do that because ultimately we want to get to the end. We want to get to what Scripture has to say about these topics. But the terms do matter. So use discernment on when to navigate. Hey, I really appreciate conversation that's going, but we're going to move on. As well as, I can't stress enough, this is a discussion that needs to be had respectfully and with sensitivity. There may be students that are wrestling with this right now, internally. And so if you have certain students or the tone of the conversation is just crapping on people and just spitting truth sternly with no sensitivity or grace, if someone is struggling with this, it's going to shut them off completely. Okay, so even if you want to say something like that at the beginning of the discussion of just, hey guys, we're going to be talking about this topic tonight. It is a very big topic, and we want to identify truth in it, but we want to do it gracefully and love and with sensitivity and respectfully. So I can't stress that enough because these conversations need to be had, but how the church has them is just as important, okay? And even in that, I would encourage you, do some follow-up after. Ask students, hey, how was that discussion? Did you feel like that's something you've talked about before? Even as the discussion is going on, identify what are the students that didn't talk at all? What are the students that stayed quiet? Don't look into it too much. There might be students that were just like, yeah, this is a weird topic, I don't want to talk. But there also might be students that didn't talk because they are struggling internally, or they're struggling conceptually. They're trying to grasp what they've heard and what we're talking about here. And as a leader, we want to be there for them through all of it. All right. So even if you see someone that's quiet, you might want to tap them after or this week and just be like, "Hey, it was a really big discussion we had. What are you thinking? Was there anything that came up that you had questions about? Anything that you've been wrestling with in regards to what we talked about? Anything that you really affirmed or liked that we spoke?" In having these discussions, we want there to be an open door for continual discussion. So I'm really looking forward for you guys to be able to have these discussions, but just know that we're not going to cover everything all at once in one evening. And just like the discussion on affections, you don't have to just take 30 minutes on this. If you guys want to do some personal care time during the free time, and then you really use that hour for this discussion, do that. You don't got to use the whole hour, but just know you have that time, especially to do this well. I would much rather you take more time and hit the crucial pieces of defining terms, personalizing it, and going to scripture than, oh, well, you know what, we're at the time, let's just move on to something fun. So I am going to be praying continuously throughout this week, earnestly for this topic, because it is one that is, I think, impactful for a lot of people, a lot of students in Crossover, not even just personally, but what they observe. And we want to continue to create a biblical and gospel lens. So I am praying for you this week. If you have any questions, let me know. In the email I sent out, I'm going to have some resources that if you want further information on these topics, don't feel like you're well equipped, feel free to read through those before your discussion. Unfortunately, I'm going to be on vacation next week, and I won't have phone service. But if you have any questions, any issues that arise, I've been talking to Matt Sawada very closely about this. He said he's more than willing to draw alongside if anybody needs anything. But I'm going to be eager to hear how these discussions go when I get back. So I love you all. If you guys have any questions, just let me know. Thanks.